We're continuing in Chapter 10 on managing databases with SQL Server. We're on page 409, and the code on 409 will create a stored procedure. Stored procedure is code that is written in a programming language, and it is stored on the server. And the procedure can be accessed and executed by a user who wants to carry out those tasks. So the one on the top of page 409 is a procedure called insert customer and interests, and it's going to be used to create a new customer and at the same time create their interests and put them in the customer artist intersection table. So the code that's on page 409 and 410 is already out there in a file. Let's go to our File tab and go to Open File. And the one we want is right here, create procedure, insert customer and interests. So let's open this up. And this code matches the code on page 409 and 410. So let's take a look at it. So this says create the procedure. And after the word as, this is the body of the procedure. So if you're thinking like C#, this would be like a curly bracket saying this is where it begins. And then somewhere down at the bottom would be another closing bracket saying that is the end. This is the name of the procedure. So if you want to access this procedure, that's how you do it. And these with the ampersands in front are arguments that are passed in to the procedure. So this is a parameter list basically. So we're going to pass in a last name, area code, phone number, email, and nationality. And then we've got some local variables here. So we're going to have a row count, an artist ID, and a customer ID. Those are all integers. They're going to be have values stored in them as we execute some SQL a little bit further down. So here is our first SQL statement. And what we want to do is we want to get a count of the rows in customer, where the customer last name is equal to the one that was passed in and the first name, and basically all of these match except for nationality. So what we're doing is we're looking to see, we're doing a select statement, and this is the criteria. And so if we find somebody out there that has the same 5 values in that row as the 5 that we want to put in, it will come back with a count of 1. And if there is that customer, so that means the customer is already there. If the customer is not already there, then we can go ahead and put them in. If the customer is there, then we want to print out an error message. So let's go down a little bit further here. So here we're seeing if the customer is already there. And if the count is greater than 1, that's what this was. It took the value of count that was returned by the SQL select statement, and it stored it in the variable called row count. And if that is the case, that this is more than 0, then we print out a message saying the customer is already in the database, and we print out their last name and first name. And we use begin and as some other programming languages do instead of the curly brackets. Now, if the row count is 0, then that means the customer does not exist in the database. And what we're going to do is we're going to carry out an insert command. We're going to put into the customer table, into the fields last name, first name, area code, phone number, and email, a new last name, a new first name, a new area code, new phone number, a new email. So these are the values that will get inserted. Then what we want to do is we want to select that record from the database. We're just verifying that we got it. So we're going to select customer ID from this table where the last name, first name, area code, phone number, and email all match the one that we just inserted, and it will return the customer ID, and it'll store it in this variable. So this is basically just an ordinary select statement, but we're allowed to take one of the values that gets returned and store it in a variable. Okay, so now customer ID, ampersand customer ID, holds the ID number for the new customer that we just put in. Okay, and then we tell them that we put the customer in the database, and we print out their first name and last name. So after we put the customer into the customer table, then we have to make some entries in the customer artist intersection table. And we were going to have a rule for doing that. We're not going to have them pass in the names of all of the artists that they're interested in. Instead, that's what this last argument here was for, nationality. There is no nationality in the customer table, but there is a nationality in the artist table. So they're going to tell us a nationality that they are interested in. And then after we put them into the customer table, then what we're going to do is we're going to do a select statement here. We're going to select the artist ID from the artist table where the artist nationality is equal to the nationality that the customer says that they're interested in. So I think there's 4 that say United States out there. So if they put in United States, then this will select those 4 records. And we've got a declare artist cursor as a cursor for this, okay? And if you look back on page 353 where they first talk about this, a cursor is a pointer into a set of rows. So let's assume United States is what they selected. Then this will return 4 rows, I believe, and this will give us a pointer into those 4 rows, okay? So we open that up, and then the fetch command, basically what we're basically going to do here is we're going to do a loop that steps through all of the artists that are from this particular nationality. So if it's United States they selected, then we're going to go through this while loop 4 times. Okay. So we will fetch from the artist cursor into the artist ID. So what we selected basically was you think of it as a table with having 4 artist IDs in it who are all the artists from the United States, for example. So as long as the fetch status is equal to 0, that means a success, and we will do what is between here, and we will insert into the customer artist intersection table the artist ID, which we just read here, and the customer ID. Those are the field names, and these are the values that we're going to put in. So we just read the first item from the list of 4, and so we get the first artist ID, and that's going to go in the artist ID field. And we've already got the customer ID from a little bit further up here. Where did we do that? Right here. After we inserted it, we wanted to find out what the ID was. So we've got 2 IDs. That's basically what goes into the table, and we will print out that we added that, and we will fetch the next one, and we'll keep on doing that. Eventually this will fail and it'll return with a non-zero value, and then we will follow the while loop again. We've got begin and end here, marking the begin and end of the body of the while loop. When we fall out of that loop, we want to close the cursor, deallocate any memory for it. So if we execute this code now, it will create a procedure called insert customer and interests. Let's go ahead and do execute. And let me make my messages window a little bigger down here at the bottom. And it says the command was executed or completed successfully. And it should appear over here under our programmability. And even if we do a refresh here, it does not seem to appear. Let's click on stored procedures again. It is showing up. Okay, I hit refresh a couple of times earlier and it was not showing up. So there is a stored procedure that we have added. And now we're going to execute some code to test that procedure. Let's open up a new query, and this is going to insert a new customer. So if we want to execute a stored procedure, we do the exec command, and we give the name of the procedure, insert customer, and whoops. And it looks like it should pop up here, but it's not. Okay, so here's our code to test it. We're going to insert a new customer. When we get done with the customers, we currently have 10. We should have 11. We are going to provide this information. He is not currently in the database, so we should have no problem adding him to the database. He does not have a nationality, but the artist does. So the way that we're going to insert the interests for the artist or for the customer is we're not going to ask them for names. We're going to ask them for a nationality that they can select. So there are 2 French customers out there in the database, and there are 2 French artists out there in the database. And right now we have 28 rows in the customer artist intersection table. So when we get done running this query or running this stored procedure, we should have one more customer, so a total of 11 customers, and we should have 2 more interests because there are 2 French artists out there, and that would give us 30 records in the customer artist intersection table. So now we're ready to go ahead and run this. I'm not sure why we're getting this red wavy line here saying they could not find the stored procedure, because the stored procedure is right there. And let's just double check and make sure it's spelled correctly, and it looks like it is. So let's go ahead and execute this one. Okay, and it tells us that 1 row was affected, and this is where we added the new customer, Michael Bench, to the customer table. And we have an artist, customer artist intersection. His ID is 1053, and he's interested in artist number 4 and 5. If we go back over here and look at our artist table and just select the top 1,000 rows, and we look at artists 4 and 5, 4 and 5 are the 2 that are French. If we go back here now and look at our customer table, instead of 10, we should have 11, and he got added. And if we look at the customer artist intersection table, there should be 1053 along with 4 and 5, I think. So let's go and select the top 1,000 rows. And there is number 4, artist number 4 with customer 1053, and there's artist number 5 with customer 1053. So the stored procedure was executed, and it allowed us to add a new customer along with their interests to the customer table and the customer artist intersection table. So that's an example of stored procedures in SQL Server and passing in parameters to those stored procedures.